It is 10 o'clock. This is Sky News at 10, our top story. Broken beyond repair. The family of BB King, killed in the Southport stabbings, speak of their grief and thank people for their support. Taking a stand against hatred, the anti-racism marchers on the streets today in response to the far-right violence which followed the killings. Also tonight, the Israeli airstrike on a school-turned-shelter in Gaza, at least 80 people feared dead. Tens of thousands evacuated as Russia launches an operation to try and deal with Ukraine's incursion into its territory. The world's fastest man speaks to Sky News about winning gold in Paris and competing while having COVID. Banksy's sixth new artwork this week is taken down just hours after it was revealed. And we will take a first look at tomorrow's front pages in our press preview from 10:30. Good evening. The parents of a 6-year-old who was killed in the Southport attack have paid tribute to their daughter, saying she was full of joy, light and laughter. BB King's mum and dad said they've been deeply touched by the response of the community in Southport and by people further afield. And they revealed that BB's 9-year-old sister Jeannie witnessed the attack but managed to escape. Today, thousands of people took to the streets of towns and cities across the country to speak out against anyone wanting to use what happened in Southport as a pretext for disorder or violence. Nick Martin has our top story.
6-year-old BB King surrounded by her family in a poignant photo taken before their lives were torn apart. BB's 9-year-old sister Jeannie not only witnessed the horrific attack but managed to escape. In a statement, parents Lauren and Ben praised Jeannie's courage and also paid tribute to BB. Her resilience is a testament to the love and bond she shared with her little sister, they said, and we will continue to support her as we navigate this painful journey together as a family. Our beloved BB was full of joy, light and love, and she will always remain in our hearts as the sweet, kind and spirited girl we adore.
The solution to this hate will always lie in our communities.
Throughout the day, demonstrations have taken place across the country, a response to violent clashes and rioting in the aftermath of the Southport stabbings. The killings have ignited fierce debate about race and immigration, fuelled in part by rumours spread on social media in the aftermath of the tragedy.
There's a lot of people of colour who are very, very frightened right now. And events like this, when you come together in unity with people from your community to show that there's more of us than them, they're so affirming and uplifting and they're really needed right now. The threat has not gone away and this is something that we've said from the beginning. This is literally the first step, is coming together to build that momentum. But, I know from personal experience that the threat is absolutely still there.
Send them home!
Elsewhere, a man had to be restrained after turning up to a stand-up to racism demonstration in Newcastle. Another demonstrator said she refused to be labelled as far-right just for her views.
I have no problem with immigration, with integration, but what is it with the boats? They're not coming straight from the country they come from, they're coming through 2-3 more in some cases. That's not asylum.
In London, crowds gathered outside what was believed to be the headquarters of Reform UK, but the party says they're not based there anymore.
Refugees are welcome here!
And a similar gathering in Cardiff passed off peacefully. But in Liverpool, the arrival of a small group caused the atmosphere to change. Police officers moved in to talk to some people who turned up on the edge of the crowd.
So a few minutes ago, some people turned up and unfolded a union flag, and it's prompted a reaction from those who were already here, the anti-racist protesters, and that's led to the police moving in and putting a line in between these two groups.
The crowd surged, chanting, waving banners. Police led a woman and 2 men away to calm the situation down. But it is a sign that these are tense times. Nick Martin, Sky News, Liverpool.
Now, humanitarian groups say that an airstrike on a school which was being used as a shelter in Gaza may be the deadliest attack since the war there began. At least 80 people died in the strike. The Israeli military says the compound was being used as a command centre by Hamas. Well, a warning. This report from our international affairs editor, Dominic Waghorn, includes images of the bodies of some of the victims and of a boy who was seriously burned.
The floor is literally soaked with blood, scattered with debris and human remains. Israel doesn't dispute what it did here, using missiles to strike a building that was full of people. It says it was hitting a Hamas stronghold where 20 militants were based. Palestinians say civilians were sheltering in the school and more than 90 died in the attack. In a hospital nearby, 15-year-old Ahmed is burned over half his body. His mother, who wanted to stay anonymous, told Sky News the attack came just after morning prayers.
Before we knew it, the whole building was on fire. I could see the carpet catch fire. We figured out what happened, the floor below. I don't know what to say. We found our men, our sons, sitting between limbs and dead bodies. I started looking for my children like a crazy person.
Her two daughters were also injured. Israel says it took steps to avoid civilian casualties here. They seem to have failed, judging from the testimony of doctors Sky interviewed in the hospital.
They have received more than almost 95 bodies, dead bodies here. Most of them were shattered into pieces and burned to death. And they receive almost between 70 and 100 injured cases, mostly elderly people and children and some women.
The EU's top foreign affairs official condemned Israel for yet another attack on a school, calling it an unjustifiable massacre. Save the Children officials say the scene at Al Tabahin is among the worst they have ever witnessed.
There were 17 attacks in July that were verified, and we cannot normalize this. Nearly half of the population in Gaza is children. There were children living in this shelter, and we must stop the attacks against children.
There are meant to be ceasefire talks this week, convened by regional powers in America. But Egypt says this attack makes it clear Israel doesn't have the political will to end this conflict. The US had warned Israel to avoid escalation ahead of those talks. But the loss of so many civilian lives in yet another mass casualty airstrike does nothing to improve the chances of progress. Dominic Waghorn, Sky News.
Well, our Middle East correspondent Alistair Bunkle is in Jerusalem for us and joins us now live. So, Ali, look, Israel has defended its action here. What's been the reaction from the rest of the world?
Yeah, Israel is disputing the number of dead as it's coming out of Gaza. They have released tonight the photos of 19 men who they say were fighters for either Hamas or Palestinian Islamic Jihad, who they killed in this strike, and they have defended their actions, saying that they carried out surveillance beforehand, they used precision-guided munitions, and they acted within international law. Now, I would say, firstly, that there is already some pretty heavy dispute about these 19 dead men who the IDF have published their names and identities of. There's quite a lot of people saying that they know these people, or some of them personally, and they had no connections whatsoever to Hamas or Islamic Jihad. And so there's a lot of confusion about what happened. Israel does not acknowledge the civilian death toll or put an estimation on it. They just dispute Hamas or the Gaza Health Ministry's claims as to how many died. The reaction in the wider world, well, firstly in the region here, you heard some of it in Dominic's report, it's been widely condemned around the Middle East, but it's also been condemned by allies of Israel. It was described as a massacre by the EU's top diplomat. The British Foreign Secretary David Lammy put out a tweet saying that Hamas should not use civilian buildings to hide in, but also said, I think quite pointedly, that Israel should abide by international law. And the White House has also said that it is concerned by what it has seen. And so I think as we lead up to these ceasefire negotiations again, starting next Thursday. There is some hope on them, despite the fact we've been here many times before. But the sense I get from speaking to foreign diplomats, particularly Western diplomats, is one of growing frustration and growing impatience at a war that has now gone on for more than 10 months. And even though they are more often than not publicly supportive of Israel, every time an incident like this happens, whatever the truth behind exactly how many were killed, they know it looks very, very bad. It does not make it easy for them to continue supporting Israel. And as I say, I sense that there is growing impatience with this war.
Okay, Alistair, Buncle there in Jerusalem. Now, as the conflict in Gaza continues, there's growing concern over a potential escalation following the recent assassinations of senior leaders from both Hamas and Hezbollah. Our correspondent, Cordelia Lynch, reports now from Beirut, where she's been speaking to those who witnessed the airstrike that killed Hezbollah's top military commander.
In Lebanon, the drums of war are getting louder. This is Dahiyeh, the heart of Hezbollah in the southern suburbs of Beirut. Here, they mourn their martyrs. A procession of pride and pain. But privately, they are plotting revenge. And they're a wild card Israel believes may be the first to strike. This is the source of Hezbollah's fury, the aftermath of an assassination. The group's top military commander, Fuad Shukr, killed in an airstrike. Israel said he was behind the hit that killed 12 children in the Israeli-occupied Golan Heights.
This was a devastating attack. You can hear the rubble being cleared and you can see the remnants of people's lives everywhere. This was an incredibly audacious move by Israel, and what happens here has the potential to reshape the Middle East.
Nora felt it all. She was stuck in a lift. The blast ripped through the 65-year-old's home. The portrait of her two brothers who died fighting Israel, one of the few things still intact.
Here's all the destruction. My daughter was sleeping here when the explosion happened, but at that very moment she'd gone to the other room. When it hit, she couldn't see a thing.
How surprised were you that Israel was able to strike this building?
Israel is an enemy, the enemy of God. We never know when they will strike. For so long they would attack us day and night. They don't have any limits. Whenever they want, they would hit us. But God will take revenge on Israel, the United States and Britain.
For Hezbollah, it was a major blow, exposing and humiliating. For Noura, it was personal, infuriating and unforgivable. A few floors below, we find Saba, a seamstress. She looks bereft, sitting in a shell of a room. This, the tailor's where she worked. 5 civilians were killed in the attack, including 2 children.
Do you want to see Hezbollah retaliate?
Of course I do. It was a terrorist attack. It's unbearable. You're sitting doing nothing and suddenly everything collapses on you? You can't understand what we witnessed. I swear you can't understand.
You're feeling angry?
For sure. I'm so angry. I'm not scared of death. Let that happen. But this anxiety of never knowing when the next attack will happen or what will happen to you, will you escape? Will you be paralyzed? When you live through times like these, you die 100 times every day.
The Lebanese government may be in power, but it's not in control, and the economy is crippled. Hezbollah will decide what happens next, and yet this is the minister who has to try and prepare for the worst.
Of course, a fragile nation like Lebanon won't stand such aggression to this degree of we're seeing in Gaza. But we have to be prepared. We pulled ourselves together to really work on advancing our preparedness, whether the healthcare or logistics or having food, fuel, and other stuff, to a certain level that we can actually absorb such aggression in the first instances of an Israeli attack on Lebanon.
Do you think that we're edging closer or further away from possible regional war?
Someone who flies or sends their militants or their assassins to another capital, is not shy from waging a regional war. I think we are getting closer to a regional conflict. We are, as a matter of fact, in regional conflict.
Do you think Benjamin Netanyahu is still open to a ceasefire deal?
I think Netanyahu is only concerned about waging this regional war to save his neck.
All sides say they don't want a war, but the region is closer than ever to sliding into one. Hezbollah may make the first big move, a group Western states have designated a terrorist organisation, but it's also a major force in the region, and no one knows how far it's willing to go. Cordelia Lynch, Sky News, Beirut, Lebanon.
Now, Russia has evacuated more than 76,000 people from areas along the border with Ukraine following Kiev's incursion into the region this week. The local governor says that a counter-terrorism operation has been launched in response to the biggest attack on Russian territory since the invasion of Ukraine. Our security and defence editor, Deborah Haynes, reports.
After almost 2.5 years purely focused on Ukraine, Russian firepower is now forced to take aim on home ground after a shock Ukrainian offensive. The Kremlin released more footage of its military fighting back, perhaps seeking to assure an anxious public. Images, too, of Russian reinforcements arriving in the Kursk region. But this crisis for Vladimir Putin is far from over, as battles rage for a 5th day. It's even prompted Russia to impose new security measures along its border with Ukraine.
Last night, Russian National Anti-Terrorist Committee introduced a counter-terrorist operation regime on the territory of Kursk, Bryansk and Belgorod regions. That means there will be separate restrictions on the movement starting today. There will be document checks where there is a threat of terrorist acts.
With Kyiv saying very little in public, videos on social media offer the clearest evidence of the Ukrainian push into Russian land. Here a line of destroyed Russian vehicles and dead soldiers. In his strongest hint yet, Ukraine's president talked about what he called his country's action to push the war into the aggressor's territory.
I thank every unit of our defense forces that makes this happen. Ukraine is proving that it really knows how to restore justice and guarantees exactly the kind of pressure that is needed. Pressure on the aggressor.
The Russian authorities say the attack has prompted more than 70,000 civilians to flee. An upheaval all too familiar in Ukraine because of Russia's war, now felt here too. Deborah Haynes, Sky News.
Time now for a look at some of the day's other top stories. And 7 people have been treated in hospital after a crush at the Boardmasters Music Festival in Cornwall. The incident, which happened in an area of the festival site known as The Point, led to the cancellation of a DJ set, but the area reopened today. All of those injured have been discharged from hospital. The funeral of Jay Slater has been held in Lancashire. The 19-year-old went missing in June while on holiday in Tenerife. His body was found a month later. A post-mortem found that he died from a traumatic head injury, believed to have been caused by a fall. The Royal Navy has revealed 2 Chinese warships have travelled through UK waters closely watched by a British frigate. HMS Richmond kept a close watch on the Navy task group as it passed the UK twice in 3 weeks, travelling to and from Russia. North Korea's leader Kim Jong-un says it'll take up to 3 months to rebuild areas affected by flooding. He was speaking as he met residents from the devastated area near to the border with China. According to state media, more than 15,000 flood victims will move to Pyongyang while recovery efforts there continue. Now, the world's fastest man has told Sky News the 100-metre final at the Paris Olympics was one of the greatest races in history. Noah Lyles took gold last weekend, but just days later got COVID and failed to do the double in the 200 metres. He's been speaking to our sports correspondent, Rob Harris, as the Games draw to a close, with yet more medals for Team GB.
Clear of COVID, the world's fastest man can finally celebrate.
Sky News, congrats. Thank you.
And speak to Sky News. 2 days after, Noah Lyles sparked panic in Paris with this collapse.
The fatigue and the energy was just fading pretty rapidly. But after, quite a bit of time, I was able to recompose myself. I was able to get some medication underneath, so I was able to breathe again.
After his positive test, the American masked up to collect 200-metre bronze. It joined the gold one in the 100-metre final by 0.005 of a second.
As I got closer and closer to the line, I was just like, I need the lean. Like, this is not a race where I can say I can just run through it at top speed and I'll be able to get it. I need the lean. And I'm glad that I listened to that, because if I didn't, I don't know if I would have won. I try to be a showman. Some people criticize me for it, some people love it, so now I am officially the world's fastest man.
And there is the full-time whistle then. Americans were celebrating football gold on the penultimate day of the Olympics thanks to a Brit. Victory for Emma Hayes' side in the women's final, having only left Chelsea in May. Team GB is facing its lowest gold haul in 2 decades.
Caden Cunningham needs a knockout shot.
Missing out on a 15th when Caden Cunningham lost the taekwondo final to settle for silver. Yeah. Diving, though, has delivered like never before. A 5th medal, bronze for Noah Williams in the 10-metre platform. And more wonders on water. Kate Shortman and Izzy Thorpe, GB's first ever artistic swimming medalist with duet silver. Park Run brought Georgia Bell back to running, now reaching the podium in the city of her birth, with bronze in the 1500. And 3rd place too for the men's and women's 4x400 relay teams, pushing Team GB over the 60-medal threshold for a 4th consecutive Olympics. And now, just 5 medals off a record overseas total, heading into the final day. Rob Harris, Sky News, Paris.
Now, Banksy's 6th new artwork this week has been taken down just hours after it was revealed in northwest London. The street artist confirmed he was behind the piece, which is a silhouette of a cat, by posting a photo of it on Instagram, but it has been removed due to safety reasons. Amelia Harper has this.
A billboard in northwest London with the silhouette of a stretching cat, the 6th in an animal series by Banksy, the elusive street artist inspiring others.
I think it's a great thing that Banksy is doing for London. It's, posting one every day. It's really created an excitement. I particularly like his stencil art.
Everyone's anticipating where's the next one going to be, and I'm just so glad it was quite close to where I live.
I was shocked when I seen it, but I can't understand how he can do this without anybody seeing him.
It's the latest work this week, starting with a goat, elephants, hanging monkeys and pelicans above a London chip shop. There was also a wolf before being stolen and carried away. And people also try to get a piece of the latest Banksy. Here a man with a hammer chips away the board. And then this.
Then you can't take it down.
A confrontation between members of the public and a contractor told to remove it.
It's clear that members of the public don't want this Banksy going anywhere. The police are in attendance and visitors are trying to make sure it remains in place.
But it didn't. The billboard mural unscrewed piece by piece, headed to an art gallery. But is this just yet another Banksy?
Banksy is very interesting because the way he's able to bring his street art available to the public in such an easy form. He's also got the edge factor where he's unknown, and I think all those factors combined make him much loved as an artist.
But despite his popularity, this latest mural is being taken down. The question now, when will the next one pop up? Amelia Harper, Sky News.
All right, let's get the latest sports news now. Here's Louise.
This Sky News Sports Bulletin is brought to you by Vitality. Getting more people more active. Live life with Vitality.
Just nice to have that sort of closure. I mean, also for me to get to do it at an Olympics as well. And, you know, the run that we had was, I think, exciting. Like, we came back from some sort of improbable kind of situations in the matches, and you know, it was disappointing end. We would have liked to have given ourselves a chance at a medal, but didn't play well enough, unfortunately. And yeah, it was obviously sad leaving the court for the last time, but happy. You know, ultimately, like, I'm glad I got to finish my career on my own terms, you know, on court in front of, you know, a brilliant crowd.
How do you feel about the sort of final chapter? I think we could go back a few years, but especially the last few months. You say you got to write it on your own terms. How does that feel as an athlete to be able to, that's a tough decision, retirement, so how does that feel?
Yeah, it is difficult, and, you know, I think it's very personal as well. Like, you know, and I feel like in the last few years, like, a lot of the guys that have been up at the top of the game, you know, have been asked that question, like, a lot, like, when are you going to retire, and, you know, when is the right time? And it's not always that helpful because, you know, the athletes maybe don't know themselves, and I don't think there isn't a perfect ending, and there's no right way for everyone. You know, it's going to be different for each person. I was there when Roger finished playing, and, you know, seeing him competing in doubles alongside Rafa was an amazing ending, but not one that many people would have expected for, you know, Federer's last match. And, you know, for me, like, the Olympics has been an unbelievably special event to me, and, you know, although I made my living playing singles, like, to do it on the doubles court with, you know, with Dan, who's been a friend of mine for many years, and, you know, have not a fairy tale ending, like, which would have been winning a medal, but having, you know, a brilliant run has been, yeah, really special. Being surrounded by all of my teammates and, you know, having my friends and family here has been really nice.
Why have the Olympics, especially for you as a tennis player, why have the Olympics meant so much to you in your career?
Because it's the best sporting event. You know, I love tennis, obviously, but I ultimately love sport. I watch lots and lots of sport. I grew up playing all sorts of sports with my brother and my family. I love being part of a team. You know, representing your country always poses like...
This Sky News Sports Bulletin is brought to you by Vitality.
Well, that was Sky News at 10. Coming up, we'll take a first look at tomorrow's papers in our press preview. Tonight, we're joined by the broadcasters Eamon Calturner and Lucy Beresford. Among the stories we'll be discussing, this on the front of the Sunday Telegraph. Its headline, Schools to Rage War on Putrid Fake News. We'll be right back.
I'll become the first person in history to fly to all 7 continents solo. But the main goal really is to raise $1 million to help fight cancer. I think I always found aviation very interesting, but when I first got introduced to aviation around the age of 13, I couldn't really find a reason to pursue it. I couldn't justify pursuing it. And so I wanted to do something. I've always wanted to have a positive impact on this world. So when I was introduced at 13, I saw this as an opportunity to really have a positive impact and to use the attention garnered for something that's truly important. I'm currently working with St. Jude Children's Hospital, and they have partners around the world. And so my main goal right now is to visit 1 or 2 hospitals in each continent, really showing that the fight against cancer is global. We're kind of in this fight together, and that it's time that we end it. These airplanes are built to usually fly 3 to 5 hours, maybe 400 to 600 miles. But this plane has been modified to hold around 750 liters of fuel, which means I can fly close to 5,000 kilometers in one single run. My longest flight will be from Japan all the way to Alaska. That will be closing, that will be over 3,000 kilometers and would take me 12 hours at least if everything goes well. There's been days where I've been scared. I actually first attempted to fly around the world last year. But I had an engine failure on my very first flight. And so that ended up delaying this trip all the way till now. But when I started this trip, I was very young. I was 13. I thought I was invincible. I was ready to take on the world. And now that I'm a bit older, I have a lot more experience. I'm still ready to take on the world, but I no longer feel like I'm invincible. If you believe in something, you have to fight for it. And this is a cause I believe in.
Hello there, you are watching the press preview, a first look at what is on the front pages as they arrive. The next half an hour, we'll see what's making headlines with the broadcasters Amy Nicole-Turner and Lucy Beresford. So let's see what is on the front of some of those front pages. We'll start with the Express, which carries a tribute from the parents of 6-year-old BB King. In it, they reveal BB's older sister witnessed her murder. Here's the Sunday Mirror with the same story. Their headline, BB's sister saw her sister being killed. It's also the main story for these Sunday People. The Justice Secretary, Shabana Mahmood, writes in The Observer that the backlog of cases related to the riots will set back planned reforms to the criminal justice system. In The Times, the Director of Public Prosecutions warns rioters who've yet to be caught could eventually be sentenced to 10 years in prison. The Mail on Sunday claims Sir Keir Starmer's Chief of Staff, Sue Gray, is deliberately blocking access to the Prime Minister. And the Sunday Telegraph reports that the national curriculum will be updated to include lessons about online extremism and fake news. And a reminder, by scanning the QR code you see on screen during the programme, you can check out the front pages of tomorrow's papers while you watch along with us. All right, but tonight we're joined by Amy Nicole-Turner and Lucy Beresford, as I said. Amy, Lucy, thanks both for being with us. Let's get straight into it, and we'll start with the front of the Mirror. As we said, there are a couple of papers have this tribute and the horrifying detail that we didn't know, that BB's sister saw the attack.
Yeah, exactly. Just when you thought this story couldn't get any more horrifying, it manages to. B.B. King's parents have released a statement, a very powerful, courageous statement to tell us more about what happened at that dance class. And it turns out that her 9-year-old sister was actually there and witnessed the attack. So this family are not only coping with the loss of the youngest daughter, but also trying to deal with which will be inevitably a lifelong trauma for their other little girl. And I think it's just after the chaos and mayhem that we've seen as the fallout of this attack, we're just, again, bringing it back to what initially prompted everything, and just seeing this clearly again as a reminder of what's an awful tragedy and what we should really be talking about.
Yeah, and it's also the top story of the Sunday Express as well, with the same picture of the family. And the reporting there, Lucy, says that, you know, the parents, Lauren and Ben, have said that Jeannie, who was 9, who saw the attack, has shown incredible strength and courage. But as Amy was mentioning there, this is trauma now that everyone in the family is going to be feel really acutely.
Yeah, it's really interesting that this story is coming to the fore in this way, because it isn't just about the events that happened, and they were so tragic. And it's good that we're reminded that this is what was really the most important story of the last 10 days. But in terms of the survivor guilt that someone could have as a result of witnessing something like this, but also being the one that escaped when you now know that your sibling wasn't able to survive, the repercussions of that can be really extreme, and huge therapeutic interventions can be really beneficial from a very early stage. I'm very glad in a way that the family are publicising this, because it now knows that everybody knows that Jeannie King did actually undergo this trauma herself, which, as you say, could have lifelong repercussions. But I sincerely hope it doesn't, in the sense that there are therapeutic interventions that can be made that can really ameliorate any kind of trauma and suffering. But it will be about prioritising this sense that you didn't maybe leave your sister, that actually you shouldn't have run away, maybe you should have tried to rescue her. All of that will need to be processed, and it might not just be for the parents to do that, but also the wider community to support this little girl.
But at the age of, she's only 9.
So little, that's the thing, she's so little still, isn't she?
But explain what happened to her.
And you can definitely do that in age-appropriate language, and you need to, because this is something that needs to be processed, and to kind of sweep it under the carpet and to try to pretend that it didn't happen, or that it wasn't as traumatic as the little girl experienced, is going to be really important. But the key message will be, there wasn't anything really that you could have done, because that will probably be that could be one of the things that the child is very distressed by. Could I not have saved my sister?
It's just tragic, isn't it? I suppose you say as well, the fact that the story is being publicised now and that we're talking about it will hopefully show the family that people are thinking about them, give them some strength as well, and of course give Jeannie some strength, who is going to need a lot of support throughout the rest of her life. All right, let's move on to the other stories surrounding this, and we'll look at the Times now. And this is a warning from the Director of Public Prosecutions, Stephen Parkinson, talking about writers facing 10-year terms. We've had a number of people involved in this sentence to terms 32 months, I think. To recollection, is one of the longest we've had so far, but I guess this is the rest of them that are going to be caught up in all of this.
Yes, it's an interesting story, because some people have said that the sentencing is too severe, that actually there are certain categories of offence that actually don't justify this kind of tariff. But I think what's really happening here is it's part of the crackdown to try to make sure that the riots don't escalate. And there had been fears that there might be riots tonight because of the start of the football season, that there might be riots tomorrow because it's apparently going to be 30 degrees and people will be, running around having had a whole day in the sun, maybe with some alcohol consumed. What are the ways in which you can actually clamp down on this, making it really, really visible that you are having a zero tolerance? And I think the front pages of the newspapers in the last couple of days that have had mugshots of the people who've been arrested and charged and imprisoned has been all part of the way to de-escalate this particular situation, so that people, we're very imitative creatures as human beings, and when we see someone in a very perilous situation, perhaps going to jail, we may very well think, well, that could be me, and therefore I won't change my behaviour.
But I think
to that extent, I think this is really important. What I thought was interesting that the Chief Prosecutor said, it's not about revenge, it's about justice. And for a lot of people, the sense of unfairness was that was underpinning a lot of the protests that were taking place. So in the sense that you want to see justice seen to be done, for some people that just won't be enough.
Right, Amy?
I think the thing is that the government need to be hard and they needed to be tough on this, because it's an absolute nightmare, isn't it, to see a breakdown of law and order as a government's worst case scenario. So they've done exactly the right thing. And interestingly, people have been getting sentences for inciting violence online, but not actually committing any violence. And I think a lot of people, when they see rioters will face 10-year terms and people inciting violence online on social media will also be facing jail sentences, as we've seen, then a lot of people will have questions about those at the top of that ladder. What about your Elon Musks? What about your Tommy Robinsons? Will they also face the consequences of their actions? Because we can't just have this lawlessness online. So we've heard a lot of this week about this two-tier policing. In my opinion, the only two-tier policing we've seen has been between the little foot soldiers on the bottom and those at the top, the Elon Musks and the Tommy Robinsons. So I want to see a bit of equity in the law for that, surely, because they have caused so much damage.
Well, that is where I guess the Online Safety Act, which I think the government are looking at, will come in. I mean, it's coming into force in the next few months, but I think it's going to be reviewed as well, the government have said. Let's look at the other aspects of all of this, with the tough sentences and with people potentially being sent to prison for 10 years. You know, the Justice Secretary here in The Observer talking about the impact it's going to have on the criminal justice system. We know that prisons are already massively overstretched. We're going to start releasing some people early in the next few weeks, aren't we?
Yeah, so interesting piece here. Shabana Mahmood, the Justice Secretary, has written inside the Telegraph, and her message really is that the justice system is so broken that the amount of work that has been required just in the last 8 to 10 days will actually set back efforts to rebuild this system. Now, I don't necessarily agree with that. I think it's quite a shocking statement. It's a headline grabber. But I think back to what happened in the pandemic and the way in which a creaking NHS service really pulled itself together. The scientific community accelerated, the way that you could develop vaccines, rolling out vaccines. In a crisis, what you often find is that people find not just the resources, but the will to really make big changes very, very quickly. And instead of being very negative about everything, what I wish is that Shabana Mahmood had said, this is a crisis. We have a broken system. This is actually going to really be the making of us. I think she could have turned that into a really positive story to say that we're actually going to crack this, as opposed to focusing far too much on the fact that, yes, it had been left broken in the first place.
But I think it's interesting that you bring up COVID, because one of the reasons COVID was such a crisis and we struggled to deal with it was because of the lack of preparedness. And I think, again, this is testament
not just
to,
in this country, though, it was worldwide.
5 weeks of a Labour government. We've had 14 years of Tory government bringing us up to this point. We've had cuts to police. I think we've had cuts to courts, 600 less courts, cuts to prisons. At the time of the riots, there were 700 spaces left in our prisons. We were so woefully unprepared for what was coming. I think her piece speaks to that. Of course, yes, they've dealt with it fantastically as well as best they could, but what they were equipped to deal with it was woeful. Like the state of the criminal justice system, a criminal justice system where only 2% of sexual assaults are actually charged, which means 90%, 98% aren't. That's the legacy that they were given. So
if you accept that, if you say that that is the case, absolutely. How are you going to deal with that? And my sense is this could have been a moment of saying we're really going to grab this by the scruff of the neck and we're actually going to turn it around.
They really have, though. But I think it's fair to say that the tools that they had to do that were limited because of the state of the criminal justice system.
Yeah, absolutely right. And look, and the question always comes back to money, doesn't it, as well, with both of those sort of ambitions.
Money, but also, funnily enough, I think it's about the will. And that's why I went back to the pandemic. I think there was such an amazing will to try to find a solution. And I would argue that that was a global problem, not just a lack of preparedness in the UK. And the same could be said here, that you've got a fantastic opportunity to really reinvent the justice system. OK, guys, good discussion. Plenty more, of course, to come. And we'll stay with the stories on the front pages and some of the inside pages of tomorrow morning's newspapers. Now, coming up, polls show that Kamala Harris has moved ahead of Donald Trump in 3 key states, and we'll talk about that next as well.
I'm Mark Stone and I'm Sky's correspondent based here in Washington, D.C.
Our street! Our street! Well, the plan seems to be to head to the police station where the policeman who fired the shots was based.
And everything, you know, his memories is all gone.
In almost every corner, this town has been completely destroyed by the fire. I've witnessed the remarkable passion for politics here, but the anger too.
We have to get Trump out of the White House.
Is this the moment to reform gun laws?
You know, it's easy to go to politics.
But it's important. It's at the heart of the issue.
I get that that's where the media likes to go.
No, it's not. It's where many of the people we've talked to here like to go.
I report on the biggest stories from around the world. This is a town that is effectively encircled by the Russians.
You say it's all fabrication, what's happening in Bucha?
Destroyed my nation.
We take you to the heart of stories that shape our planet.
Yeah, I can hear now quite a few explosions in the distance here in Jerusalem. A very violent series of confrontations here. What do you think of ISIS?
Everybody here knows the truth of ISIS.
Significant day of this conflict.
They keep telling us that they want aid.
And this is what's left of it.
Tanks, heavy vehicle. Why only in America?
People want their country to work.
Just want a job in a normal life.
Why are these homes empty?
I want you to be honest with people.
That has happened within minutes.
Sky News, the full story first. Free wherever you get your news.
Welcome back. You're watching the press preview. We're joined, of course, by Amy and Lucy. So let's carry straight on with the front of the Observer now. We're going to do the sidebar story, but the main picture, as you can see, tumults there in Vice President Kamala Harris. And this is kind of fascinating that she's only just become the nominee and already seems to have pulled ahead in a couple of the swing states.
Yeah, and I think this is actually quite unexpected. When Biden stepped down, I think people had reservations about Kamala because at the time J.D. Vance had just been announced Trump's VP. We thought, oh, he's going to connect with the Rust Belt, and will she? She's a bit elite, she's a bit Washington. And actually, the complete opposite has happened, and she's soaring ahead. I think she has, because it's a testament to her authenticity, to her charisma, that Trump could really only dream of, and I think that's actually coming across. And particularly interesting that it's in Pennsylvania, which is where the attempted assassination occurred, and that was really, do you remember when that happened? And everybody said, he's got it, it's in the bag, and now turns out it's absolutely not, and it's and I think she's 4 points ahead currently.
She is, yeah. It's Wisconsin, Pennsylvania and Michigan. Pennsylvania is interesting as well, not just because of the assassination, but also because...
Josh Shapiro.
Exactly, before she picked him, whilst Josh Shapiro is the governor there, and everyone was saying that he should be the pick, but perhaps he wasn't needed.
Well, it is interesting. I mean, one often talks about a bounce, and I guess the feel-good bounce is that she picked a running mate and There's some name recognition.
He is such a bounce.
And he is a bounce. He has his own baggage. But as you say, Josh Shapiro, who may have actually been able to swing the state of Pennsylvania, maybe they didn't need him. But I think what is interesting is that most people agree that actually these polls pre-Labor Day don't really count for very much. That because the majority of Americans aren't really paying attention, they're all on holiday. It's only really when they come back in September that people need to start to pay attention. However, the really interesting thing about polling is, or in politics in general, is that it's all about momentum. And if you have a momentum at this stage, it could very well give you that power to surge forward to November.
And it is interesting in American politics as well, because they call it the October surprise, but it can come at any time in the year. There will be some kind of speed hump they have to get over, or something that falls in their way.
Hillary Clinton email situation.
Precisely, right? Or the tape with Donald Trump, which didn't affect him as badly as we thought it was going to affect him. So it will be fascinating to see when that thing falls in these guys' lap, how they deal with it at that point.
Yeah. At the moment, I think the polls will go up and down as new bits of information come out. The key thing is what's going to happen at the end of September. Where is the momentum in September? That will be the most important.
Also, you know, with someone like Trump, you've not just got what might happen there, but you've got imminent court cases coming up. You've got more potentially leaked tapes. You don't know he's the most unpredictable person that we've ever had, I think, in not only American politics, but politics. Like, it is just unpredictable.
It's good to watch. If it wasn't so serious, it'd be hilarious, but it's very serious, so it's not that funny. Let's move on, if we can, to the Olympics. We'll go to the Sunday Express now. I've got a double-page spread here. Headlines there, fans get a kick out of medalists. We've got some taekwondo, some diving. I mean, we talked about this a little bit last night as well, but final day
we can talk
tomorrow.
about it every night.
I know, that's what I'm saying.
It's so fantastic.
I'm really going to miss it.
So feel good. Yeah. I am going to miss it. I'm an Olympic virgin. This is my first Olympics that I've been really excited by. And I've been fascinated by every single sports that I didn't even know existed, like artistic swimming. But there was an amazing bronze, a very unexpected bronze win by Georgia Bell in the 1,500 metres, which was exceptional. And what I loved about that particular race was you could see the strategy. You could actually see what she was doing in the course of the race. That was very exciting. And I think, you know, there's been... Sam Friedman on Twitter has produced some amazing statistics every night showing you what number of medals we had, and we're so consistent. We've got the same number of medals in London, in Rio, in Paris, in Tokyo, at exactly the same stage. So it's just very exciting.
And there are so many different sports now. I mean, this morning I was watching the breaking, which is essentially the break dancing. Olympic sport? Like, had
it's
no
controversial.
idea.
There are some people that may
the climbing, absolutely amazing.
I mean, the climbing, I think definitely. I'm not sure about golf.
But the thing like BMX, I mean, there's been so much talent on show at lots of different age groups that actually there's something so inspiring.
There is, isn't there?
Yeah.
And it's the juxtaposition of the absolute chaos and mayhem that we've had going on in the news cycle here with this little haven that is Paris.
Which is why I think it's going to be so sad when it's over, because you have to be able to do it. And the inspiration piece is really well put, because I have been watching it with my little boy, and he has been just blown away by all the different sports he's been able to see. And that's the point of it, isn't it? You get to show these kids who may not have any sort of exposure to certain kinds of sports what they could end up doing.
And again, as I said before, we're very imitative creatures. So when small children see people winning, when they see medals going around necks, when they see people tearing up around a national anthem, they can quite legitimately think, that could be me, and I'm going to try and swim harder, I'm going to try and join a running club, I'm going to join archery.
When I'm watching it.
Well, as I said on the show very recently, Adam Peaty I regard him as my own private swimming coach, because he has videos on YouTube. I have improved my swimming exponentially because of Adam Peaty.
That is fantastic.
So I'm, regularly... He can't retire, is basically what I'm saying. But it's all due to the Olympics.
The thing is about the Olympics now and Team GB, it's a little bit like the England football team. I was speaking to the director of cycling just yesterday, and he talks about when Team GB, I think it was in Atlanta or maybe in Barcelona, won 10 medals. They weren't very good. They weren't really getting loads of medals. And it's only recently with funding and with sort of
well, it's
real
basically
focus on
Sir
it.
John Major creating the National Lottery and saying, most of the money must be ploughed into sport, because I think there was a time where we were just hideously embarrassed at how few medals we came home with.
Yeah.
And now we just regularly assume that it's going to be in the 60s.
That's the thing. Yeah.
Which it is. I think we're on 61 or 62 at
And
the
what
moment.
careers that these young people are going to have ahead of them. I was reading about, what's the name of the young girl? Is it the one that we saw on the front page of the
Keely
Sun?
Hodgkins.
Yeah.
And her bikini swimwear line.
She's projected to make £2 million next year of sponsorship, of all the opportunities that will come with her success at the Olympics.
Yeah, it's brilliant stuff. All right.
22 years old.
Good for Keely. All right, well, that's the end of it tomorrow and the end of our discussion for now, guys. Thanks very much for that. Let's take a look at the weather forecast. Now, northern parts look quite unsettled over the next week. The south will be drier and hot tomorrow and on Monday, which looks like bringing the highest temperature of the year so far. There'll be a muggy start in the south with extensive low cloud bringing hill and coastal fog, but it will be sunnier, cooler and fresher elsewhere. A few showers in the far north. The showers will fade tomorrow morning and the cloud over southern Britain will slowly thin and break. Most places will then be fine, but the south of Ireland will become dull and damp. Southern Britain will turn very warm inland, but it will be nearer average elsewhere. Expect quite a stiff breeze in the south and the west. The afternoon won't change much, but Ireland's going to brighten up while the southwest may catch a late shower. Monday will be hot in the south, 33 degrees Celsius possible, but expect thundery downpours in the cooler North. Ireland and Northern Ireland will be dry. All right, coming up on Sky News at 11. The parents of BB King, the little girl killed in the Southport attack, pay tribute to their precious daughter and thank their community for their love and support.